Hello, everybody. Welcome to our My Well Self IGTV. Whoops, what a bloop there. Wellness series. And we are here with a wonderful osteopathic manual practitioner, Katharine McLarty. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Brenda. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And we're here with Katharine to learn all we need to learn about osteopathic manual practitioners. Katharine has a private clinic. What part of town are you in, Katharine?
So I'm in Etobicoke. I'm on Bloor Street, just west of the 427, south of the Toronto airport, basically.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, great. So she's in the Toronto area, and I'm super excited to learn a lot more about her and what her profession offers. So let's start off by introducing yourself, Katharine, please.
Yeah. So as you said, I'm Katharine McLarty. I'm an osteopathic manual practitioner, and I practice in the west end of Toronto. And the main thing with osteopathy and even with myself is that I'm basically helping your body heal itself.
Mm.
So I work with you to get your body to where it needs to be, improving your vitality or your health bank account, so that you can move better, feel better, and just overcome a lot of things that are going on potentially in your body, whether it be an injury, whether it's some sort of dis-ease. But it's basically to help your body heal yourself, because we have everything we need inherently in our body to heal. Sometimes we
Yeah.
just need a little bit of a nudge in the right direction to go there. So that's what we as osteopathic manual practitioners do, is sort of nudge your body towards its own health, and your body will continue to do the rest. We just help you along.
Awesome. I love that you said a healthy bank account. I love that expression.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that. I'm stealing that from you. And
Well, I steal it from my school too, because we talk about that all the time,
oh,
right? Like
great.
school talks about the health bank account. When you're out, you're out. But
You're out.
we want to keep it, you know, at a good
Built.
level. Like we're improving, right?
Yeah, great. So we'll steal from the school then. And what was your journey to becoming an osteopathic manual practitioner?
Yeah. So interestingly, growing up as a child, I always wanted to be a medical doctor. So for me, I started out in a kinesiology, actually started in nutrition and food sciences, and then switched into kinesiology. I graduated from university back in like 1998, and ended up moving to Ontario from out west, because all the rest of our family was here, to go to med school. But in that process of before doing that, I basically, but in terms of I didn't apply at that point. I wanted to, but I wanted to sort of settle down and get a few experiences under my belt.
Yep.
Let me see. I think that just sort of blacked out on me. Hang on a sec.
Yep. We got you back. Yep.
There we go. And so I ended up starting doing personal training, and I specialized in aquatic exercise and therapy at that point, and did that for about 14 years, running around doing that. Spent 5 years and then went corporate because, of course, you can only run around 14 hours a day seeing people for so long before you burn out. And in that process of the 5 years doing some corporate work, I decided I really didn't want to do that. I wanted to go back into health, but I wasn't entirely convinced I wanted to be a medical doctor. And I had an osteopath that was encouraging me to do it. And, looked into it a little bit, thought, maybe do I really want to work with humans again?
Yeah.
Do I want to work with animals? So I actually Googled veterinary osteopathy and stumbled across the school that I ended up going to in Hamilton, the Canadian Academy of Osteopathy, because one of our professors was a doctor of veterinary medicine and, of course, teaching at the school. So I went through and did the human course, and I actually just started the animal course the other month, about a month and a half ago. So I'm going to be able to work in a year on both my humans and their animals. So that kind of took me through that journey. We do a 4-year program full time, 4,200 hours. I think that's one of our next sort of questions.
Yeah, please go right into it. Yeah, please go right into it.
So I did 4 years straight in a row, 6 months of classroom, 6 months of clinical. Wow. We did 4,200 hours of classroom and 1,000 clinical hours, which is the gold standard according to the World Health Organization standard. Great. So the British School of Osteopathy is the only other one in the world that has that same sort of standard. So we're right there at the gold standard. And then I have a year now that I'll be doing the animal training program as well. So that's a postgraduate. You have to have that minimum 4-year, 4,200 hours program to be able to start into it. So,
wow, you have a really extensive background. I love the journey that you had, literally from full circle to back to health again. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. And
Yeah.
with your profession, is your team of professionals, are you guys regulated?
We currently self-regulate.
Yeah.
So there's a couple different associations out there. Again, there's varying standards to join those associations. The
Yeah.
two common ones in Ontario that tend to have the highest level of education, which is the minimum 4,200 hours. They just vary in their clinical acceptance of how many clinical hours you have.
Okay.
But again, we self-regulate. So we have the association I belong to, the Ontario Osteopathic Association, also part of OstCan.
Yep.
You have a licensing exam you write to get into that association as well. There's disciplinary action. So, if a person wanted to look up and, felt that they had a question about like, is this appropriate behavior? I
Yep.
have a question. It would all be investigated. We've got a team of people that do that within that association as well. But you know that you're monitored and you have to do certain continuing education standards and whatnot. So we're self-regulated. And
Mhm.
so long as you don't pose a risk to the public in that sense, you stay within what your scope of practice is,
Yep.
and what you're supposed to do legally, and the school lays that out for you and the association lays that out for you. You can self-regulate yourself and you can actually do more good to the public than worrying about regulation in that sense.
Absolutely. I think it's really important for people to understand that similar to conventional, practitioners, that your group, as well as others, are, there is a standard to uphold to. So
Yeah, and you're
that was
accountable. Exactly.
100% great. And this is a question that I've learned with time, and I think that people would absolutely love to hear your response. But what is the difference between an osteopathic doctor and an osteopathic manual practitioner? I had to learn this the hard way. So I'd love to hear your response to this.
Yeah. So the osteopathic doctor, they're trained in the US. So you go down to the US and you would do a 4-year medical degree and a 4-year osteopathic degree.
Mm,
So you have full medical licensing. You would have your ability to write prescriptions, things like that, as well as do osteopathy.
okay.
And in Canada, we have very few osteopathic physicians or doctors of osteopathy, and they would have been trained in the US and come back. Most of them
Okay.
that are here don't actually function in private practice. They tend to be at the hospitals and in rehab.
Mm,
So that's the big difference is you have a medical doctor and they've got the 8 years of training and their residencies there. And then in Canada, we do that minimum, like I said, the 4,200 hours with 1,000 clinical hours, but we only do the manual osteopathic therapy in that sense. We don't write prescriptions. We don't do any of that sort of stuff. So yeah.
okay. Okay. Yeah,
Does that
I
make
wasn't.
sense?
No, oh, absolutely. I wasn't aware that there was even a doctor of osteopathy. So that's kind of where that question came from. And I think people would like to know that answer too as well. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so the next question is, what general health ailments do osteopathic manual practitioners address? You can talk about your point of view or generally
Yeah.
whatever you'd like to share with us today.
So generally, so I'll start. So it's going to sound sort of weird, I think, for some people, but typically, what we would say is we don't really treat conditions.
Okay.
So
Yep.
now we look at the body. We're trying to find health within the body. We're
Yeah.
looking at how the body moves, be it patient active, patient passive, where we're manipulating a body, palpating. So we're looking at the restrictions and the lack of motion there, and those
Mm,
restrictions and lack of motion in the body that usually come from the structure. So fascia, muscle, and even down to the bony articular, like at the ligament and joint capsule. Those restrictions will affect blood flow, so they'll affect venous return, arterial blood flow, neurology, and the lymphatics.
mm,
So that's where disease or conditions start to set in, is that you've got some sort of restriction through the body, whether it be fascial tightening up and moving in a certain way around that neurovascular bundle. And that's going to change how the blood flow is going to move. That's going to change how the communication occurs between different parts of the body. And
right.
that's when you start to have disease. Now, you can also have injuries that occur, sports injuries, car accidents, where there will be that physical change that happens to the fascia and the muscle when you go through an injury of some kind.
Right.
So that's why I say, well, we don't really treat
Yeah.
conditions. However,
Yeah.
if you've had sports injuries, you're suffering from things like sciatica, you've been in, I say car accident, and I say that very cautiously because we typically do not treat MVAs,
Yes.
motor vehicle accidents. We don't
Yes.
get into that. We're not a part of treatment plans. But
Right.
I do know that, like, as an example, when I was in a car accident, I got bumped a little bit ago. I went to my osteopath literally worked on the fascia, softened that back up, took the pattern of my injury right out in that treatment, and I had no more issues after that.
Wow.
Because it was literally within a couple of days of the injury, right? My body was still, it was acute enough that it came right out and my body came back.
Wow.
So you're one of those people that doesn't want to go through those sort of a treatment plans, and
Right.
then that's how that can kind of help. But so that's soft tissue injury. You can have digestive issues, you can have TMJ issues, you can have sinus problems, headaches, you know, like I said, frozen shoulders, different things like that. All of these are resultants of some sort of structural restriction through the body, lack of motion, which is affecting motion, blood flow, neurovascular communication. And therefore, we address all of those things because we're looking at the structure of the body and how it moves, and we're looking to liberate all of those tissues and that neurovasculature. So, you know, you have a knee problem, you know, and again, it can be a compression, and the fact that the muscles, everything's pulling that knee joint together and tightening right up.
Right.
And at that point, again, it's to make sure that the musculature and everything right down to the joint, we don't have any extra stimulation, things are functioning as they need to, almost like a general traction of the joint. So the body can go compression and traction on its own without holding one position.
Okay, that's a great response. So what I'm hearing is that you cover all parts of the body, so to speak, or all, because really it's just really, they're all connected in a sense. So you cover all health elements because essentially the body is a whole function.
Yeah, if someone's like looking at, I have carpal tunnel syndrome is a really good example. Get a lot of that. So a lot of that I'm looking at, okay, is that actually in the wrist? Is there something in the carpals? Is it coming from an entrapment point at the elbow? You know, how the neurovasculature flows underneath that armpit and that axilla, how it comes under the clavicle. And then again, the brachial plexus is right up in at the bottom of the cervicals. So I'm going to examine that whole area and see how that goes. By the same token, if something is off in your hip and your pelvis, it's going to affect how your neck is sitting, which might actually also give you that symptomology that you're having with carpal tunnel. So again, if I get that base of the pelvis aligned, make sure the spine is aligned, make sure the neck, and then work down any of the muscular and fascial restrictions down the arm, it may turn out that you didn't actually have carpal tunnel, but it came on because of something else happening through the body. And that's what we mean by how that structure being realigned can open everything up and things start to flow better.
That's great. That's a great explanation. Thanks for taking us through that moment. I think that was really, really visual, for, at least for me. So that was the fantastic stuff. Let's get into stuff that maybe just irks you a little bit. And what are some myths that you wanted to dispel about osteopathic manual practitioners, if there's any? But this is really your time to highlight what's not necessarily true. Yeah, about your group of professionals.
So, I mean, Dr. Still, one of the things is, you know, as a practitioner, I'm a classically trained osteopathic practitioner in that sense, manual practitioner. And so I don't look, when I'm looking at a body, I don't use other modalities. My hands are my modality in that sense. So, you know, there'll be people, and that's one thing I do get, because I do get some patients like, well, and we had this tool that the person used on me, and there was acupuncture involved, and there was, I had some hot towel and this, and that's really not osteopathy, according to how Dr. Still had set that up when he founded the profession back in 1874.
Okay.
So it's fine to have that done, but you're no longer doing osteopathy. As he said, the house, it's like, think of a house. You only have so much space in a house for stuff. And osteopathy can fill a house because it's all about how you're thinking about the body, how you're looking at the mechanics of the body, things like that. So as soon as another modality enters into that house, osteopathy moves out, because there's only room in that house for osteopathy. That doesn't mean that those other modalities aren't good. It's just not part of osteopathy. And so, you know, I work with acupuncturists and homeopaths and physiotherapists, and they can do all of that. That's within what their scopes are. But osteopathy, Dr. Still was very much around keep it pure. Osteopathy, these are my modalities. This is what I use, my surgical implements. I'm essentially doing bloodless surgery on somebody, right? Working through that tissue very gently, creating motion and movement. And if I have to use another modality, then I'm not really using my God-given brain to do what I need to do and to look at the principles and the mechanics of the body. That doesn't mean that won't benefit you, but it's not within an osteopathic manual practitioner's wheelhouse. That's another practitioner, and that would be where I would refer somebody and say, okay, this is somebody else that can help you this way, but this is what I do. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful.
One of the other myths that we get is that more treatment is better. That's another really good one for you. So my treatments and a lot of my colleagues, we treat roughly 20 to 30 minutes for follow-up appointments. And usually even in your initial, you're sort of working with me, or I'm working on you, or helping to treat you within sort of about 30 minutes. 45 minutes is the most that the session goes. So it's usually 20 to 30 minutes. And part of that is if you think of your body as having its own internal pharmacy, the minute I'm opening up blood flow and I'm opening up that neurovascular communication, your body's internal pharmacy goes, yay, I can get this, that you're like the feedback loop. So if one
Right.
organ is saying I need this and
Right.
sends it up to the gland that has to send that back, it'll send a signal and release it. But if
Wow.
there's a restriction, less is going to come, and that organ's going to say, I need more, I need more. Well, as soon as I open that up, that feedback loop says, oh, I don't need any more, and it shuts down.
Right.
So if I treat you too long, then I'm really not thinking about the mechanics, but I'm also potentially opening up to an overdose of your own pharmaceuticals. So you could end up really sore the next day. You could end up kind of, headachy, different things like that could really take you out. So more in osteopathy is not better. It means that I'm either talking too much to you, which I shouldn't be doing anyways. I should be sitting there like looking at the mechanics. And I do talk to myself a lot. People get on my table. It's like, sorry, I'm talking, but I'm like, that's there, that's here. So if you know what you're doing, you may take a little longer than the 20 minutes, but really and truly, it's about how do I do this as efficiently as I can, get your body on that path to heal itself without sending you into a spiral where maybe you're crashed out for 2 or 3 days, right? And you're like, what the heck happened to me? Like you're overdosed on something. So that's the other big myth that we tend to find, is that more is better in osteopathy.
Right.
And that's not entirely the case.
Right. So you said another term to me, your something pharmaceuticals. What did you say? What was the term that you used?
Your internal your own internal pharmacy, right?
Your internal pharmacy. That is fantastic.
Like we all have everything we need is furnished in our own body, right?
Absolutely.
Like we all have everything we need, whether that's whether you need cortisol, whether you need angiotensin, whether you need potassium, calcium. Like there are things that we get from the foods we eat and whatnot, but generally everything that we need is within our body. If we're taking in and being able to process all of the things that we're, from a food perspective, we talk about vitamin D and the things that vitamin D can do in the body, like 270 some processes in the body, why that's so important to us. And so as doing those sort of things, our body has everything that we need to be able to furnish ourselves and keep ourselves healthy. Sometimes it's not able to get there because of that lack of blood flow or that restriction, right? And that's where sometimes that's that balance between when you go to a doctor and they give you a pharmaceutical, that's fine, that's going to help furnish you. But again, if there's a restriction of blood flow, that medication doesn't always get where it needs to get to in that right dosage. And that's why I always do warn my patients as well, is if you are on pharmaceuticals while you're having osteopathic treatment, that's not a bad thing. Just be aware of what symptoms and side effects those would have, because if your body can so you have a medication that's giving you this much, but you have your body giving you this much, which is why you need the medication to get you to that even point.
Right.
So as your body can do more, now you're getting more, but you're still getting this same amount. And now they're both getting to the target cell at the same time. So you could, again, be into a slight overdose situation. That's why I say to people, be aware, go back to your doctor, have that discussion and have them adjust it. Maybe there's a slight modification has to be made. One goes down because your body is now doing more on its own. The whole point is to support ourselves and to help you be healthy, but we need to be aware of what's happening in the body. And if the body is able to support itself, you're not going to need as much from a pharmaceutical or other, even supplement basis as well, right? But again, that's where you talk to those practitioners who are giving you those pharmaceuticals or supplements and that support system. That's not in my wheelhouse, but I just tell people what to be aware of, because your body's going to be doing a lot better.
Right. You just kind of blew my mind right there a little bit, I have to say. I haven't had this kind of conversation before where you talk about your body's own pharmaceutical. You're absolutely right. We are, I'm not a disclaimer, I'm not a practitioner or a doctor. But yeah, I love that. I'm going to take that with me when I speak with other people about that.
Yeah.
So thanks for enlightening me.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
Amazing. Yeah. You did talk a little bit about what your typical session looks like. So I'll go into maybe the next question, which is, what question do you get asked the most by your clients or patients? What kind of drives them in, or what kind of piques their curiosity about you or even your profession?
Yeah. Most people like, I think I ask people a lot, do you know what osteopathy is one of my big
Yes.
questions I ask them. They're like, no. And it's like, okay, so I'll kind of go into a little bit of, it's at a point, it's a philosophy, but it's also a gentle manual therapy. And again, sort of what we talked about, I'm looking at the structure of the body, how it moves as a comparison of one side to the other. We literally have two of everything in our body. I mean, I know we have one
Yes.
nose, but you do have two nostrils. So,
Yes.
and you have two sides of your mouth, even though you have one of them. So I'm looking at how does this side of the mouth work compared to this side, and what's happening on either side, and we look at that one way to the other. And so I explain that to them in the sense of I'm looking at how things move. What doesn't move, I want to get improvement in motion. Is it going to be 100%? And you're going to walk out with the same motion on both sides, let's say, of your arms. If you can only lift your arms, sorry, and I'm kind of on my phone there, but if I only
Yep.
get to here in a session, but then after I do treatment, maybe you're to here now, so the arm is a little bit higher, I got motion. This will continue when you leave my treatment table for the next 7 to 10 days. You're out doing your own treatment by living life. And
Right.
that body, as Newton's law says, a body in motion stays in motion until another force acts upon it. Well, when we created motion, a little bit more motion, that shoulder will stay able to keep in motion until it hits another point where there's a restriction.
Right.
And that could be from somewhere else in the body, muscularly pulling on it.
Right.
I'm sorry, I'm a hand talker. So for
No,
all of
it's
you watching,
okay.
it's like I
Please
get in
talk
front of my
about
camera.
it.
I'm like, oh my gosh,
All the
sorry about
visuals are great. I'm a
that.
visual person. I'm taking this all in. Please continue.
so so again, as you move, and then again, you might come to my treatment for your second treatment or your third treatment and be like, I can get my arm all the way up over my head now and out to the side when I do the range of motion.
Right.
And so the biggest thing I ask people is like, if you don't know, I'm going to explain what osteopathy is and how I'm looking at things. And at any point you can ask me any questions. um, I always say to people, I don't cure anything,
Right.
and that things that you are suffering with, unless it's an acute injury that you recently just had for some reason, you've had it for a while, it's taken a long time to get into your body. It's going to take a little bit of time to get out, but
Yeah.
my goal is to be as efficient as possible to get things moving so that your body will figure it out and some of these will start to come out a little bit quicker.
Okay.
Um,
Great.
yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Now, for me, it does, and I think for other people it will, because I think you're explaining things really well, and the visuals are even better. So
Yeah, I
don't
think the
stop.
biggest thing is people don't know what osteopathy is. It's like,
Yeah.
all I know is so and so told me to come here. They can't describe it. They'll say you're a cross between a chiro and a massage sort of thing. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Like, right? So it's sort
I
of
would
like,
even
well,
say
and that's why I
energy
try to.
healer. I would have add energy healer in there too as well.
Well, that's
That's my
exactly it.
opinion. Yeah.
It is exactly it. You cannot, separate that out. So, and then again, in treatments, yeah, it's like there's an element of energy exchange that to a certain extent happens through there. But again, there's that structural and just,
Yes.
we want people to feel well, right? So, yeah.
That's how I discovered my osteopathic manual was exactly what you just said. I don't know what happened, but it was a great session, and
Yeah.
that's what led me to that path.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, a couple more questions here. We're towards the end.
Yeah.
So what if someone were to come and see you, Katharine, and they're consistent and they're focused on their wellness? What outcomes or improvements could they see with time? If that can be answered.
Yeah. So again, it all depends on sort of maybe why they were coming or what their initial sort of reasoning was.
Yeah.
So somebody might experience some digestive improvement if they've, bowel movements may become more regular, or even if they were daily before, that's the
Right.
importance of daily bowel movements. But that, maybe it's less constipated, so it's easier to have that better range of motion. There might be less pain wherever they were experiencing that. Maybe for some people, it's also less headaches or jaw tension.
Right.
Maybe they sleep better, handle stress a little bit better.
Right.
Trying to think. Yeah, it really depends on why they were coming in that sense. For some people, it's that decrease in pain. For other people, it's the ability to actually feel like they can function better. I know that for some people that end up injured from like at work, where they suddenly it's like, oh, my back's killing me. To know that within the first session, by the time they're showing up for their second session, which is usually about 7 to 10 days later, depending on the injury
Okay.
or the type of pain, they're like, I can't believe how I walked out of here feeling better. And then each day it got better and better and better, right? And then we're just kind of cleaning up a few things down that second treatment. But then they're at that point, they're hooked. They're like, I'm coming back every couple of
Yeah.
weeks because I want to stay well.
Yeah.
They can feel how much of a difference that is. So again, it all depends on, and I really do believe that ultimately I'm also here to help you figure out what's best for you. If
Yeah.
your follow-up, so I mean, I don't know if this is another question, so I kind of going to lead into this one. The
Mhm.
point is, what my treatments tend to look like, unless it's something acute and you can't have 20 minutes of treatment in that sense,
Yeah.
it's only got to be 5 minutes or something. Typically, you're going to see me, and then I'm going to want to see you somewhere within 7, 10, maybe 14 days, depending. And that's first and second treatment. And then again, second treatment might be 10 to 14 days, could be 21, depending on the person, how it's going. But I do try to space out those treatments. And I am usually saying to people, that's a really good question that people have too, is, well, how long am I going to, how often do I have to come? And
Yes.
that's the start of my question is that. And I say, expect at least sort of 6 treatments, but your treatments are going to be spread out. It could get to a point where you're coming like in those 6 treatments once every 14 days, once
Right.
every 20, and then up to 21 days, and maybe even once a month until those 6 are sort of done. But again, we're going to see, because again, the real treatment happens when you walk out of my office and you're
Yeah.
moving around, walking, going for a bike ride, or maybe not in the snow, or maybe you have an indoor bike, or you like to go to the pool and have like a swim or do some aquafit, because again, those 3 things are gentle, rhythmical movement that help integrate the treatment in and get the
Nice.
body's rhythm reestablished, so
Mhm.
that the movement that we've just gotten, the restrictions we've removed, will actually continue to move out of the way that way. But some people, the most I say to people is, consider that once you feel you're in a good place, you want to go no longer than about 3 months, which would be the change of season, so that you
Right.
have a tune up every change of season,
Every
if
change of
that's all
season.
you need. But then, as soon as you start to feel maybe something's not right, get in, have that tune up, and then you're off again. Again, dealing with something sooner rather than letting it go means you would need less treatments in, like, as sort of that maintenance, right? You can kind of
Yep.
clean things up quickly and keep yourself well. So
Okay.
hopefully that
Right.
helps a little bit more.
No, no, that's really detailed. I appreciate that. And then our last question is, just so people know, are osteopathic manual practitioners covered under health benefits?
Yeah, so majority of people, it is the osteopathic manual practitioners are covered in insurance.
Hmm.
You would need to check your individual plan to see what your coverage looks like. Some
Yep.
have percentages, some have certain dollar amounts, but generally it is covered that way. I will just also say, like, I don't direct bill insurance companies
Yep.
either. So you would pay me first,
Hmm.
and then from there you would submit your receipt. The system that I use for my booking, for example, though, as soon as I process your payment,
Hmm.
sends you the receipt instantly, and then in a PDF form, so you can just upload that through some of the apps that the insurance companies have.
Yep.
Again, I've never had any issues with people having their claims denied in that sense.
Yep.
So, but if there is an issue, I always say to people, just let me know and I'll talk to them, because then I'll figure out what they're missing that they might need.
Exactly.
But otherwise than that, we get it all covered, and you get your treatment, and you feel better. And that's the end. That's the real goal, is that
That's
you're
the
going to
end
be
goal.
well and feeling better. So
Absolutely. Well,
yeah,
that is the end of our very insightful conversation. I want to thank you, Katharine, for joining us today. Again, this is Katharine McLarty. She is an osteopathic manual practitioner with her practice in Etobicoke, and I implore you to please check her out on her platform, as well as on her profile at My Well Self. Katharine, thank
yeah.
you for the
Thank you so
wonderful
much,
meeting today.
Brenda.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we'll end off by saying thank you, everybody, and thanks for listening. Bye.
Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.